What's up, everybody? In 1754, colonists called themselves loyal British subjects. 30 years later, they'd torn up that flag, written a brand new nation into existence, and dared the most powerful empire on earth to stop them. This is APUSH Unit 3, 1754 to 1800, and the College Board loves this stretch. Here's your map. The war that started it all, the taxes that lit the fuse, the revolution, and the messy fight to build a government that actually worked. Stick with me to the very end, and I'll show you the single fastest way to lock all of this in before exam day. Let's go. It starts with a war. The French and Indian War, the American front of the global 7 Years' War, pitted Britain against France over the Ohio River Valley. Britain won big and kicked France clean out of North America. But here's the catch. Victory was expensive, and Britain ended up buried in debt. To stop costly clashes with natives, Britain issued the Proclamation of 763, banning colonists from settling west of the Appalachian Mountains. Colonists were furious. They just helped win that land, and now they couldn't have it. Remember that anger, because it's only getting started. So how does Britain pay off that war debt? Tax the colonies. And each new tax made things worse. The Sugar Act hit imports. The Stamp Act of 1765 taxed every paper document, and colonists exploded with one rallying cry: no taxation without representation. Lock that phrase in. The Townshend Acts taxed glass, paper, and tea. In 1770, tension boiled over into the Boston Massacre, where British soldiers killed 5 colonists. Then the Tea Act sparked the Boston Tea Party, and Britain slammed back with the Coercive, or Intolerable, Acts in 1774. The fuse is lit. But here's the thing. A revolution needs ideas, not just anger. Colonists embraced republicanism, the belief that power comes from the people, not a king. They leaned on Enlightenment thinker John Locke, and you need to know him. Locke argued all people have natural rights to life, liberty, and property, and that government is a social contract. Break that contract, and the people can overthrow you. Then, in 1776, Thomas Paine put it in plain English in his pamphlet Common Sense, arguing it was absurd for a tiny island to rule a continent. Suddenly, independence felt like common sense. On July 4, 1776, the Second Continental Congress made it official with the Declaration of Independence, written mostly by Thomas Jefferson. And watch this, it's pure Locke. All men are created equal, with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governments get their power from the consent of the governed, and when a government turns tyrannical, the people have the right to abolish it. Then Jefferson listed King George's abuses as the receipts. The colonies weren't rebels anymore. They were a new nation. Now comes the hard part: beating the world's best army. The turning point, and the College Board wants this one, is the Battle of Saratoga in 1777. The American victory convinced France to join as a crucial ally, bringing money, troops, and a navy. That winter, Washington's army survived brutal cold and starvation at Valley Forge and came out tougher. Then, with French help, the Americans trapped the British at Yorktown in 1781 and forced their surrender. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 ended it. Britain recognized American independence and handed over land all the way to the Mississippi River. Independent at last. But now they need a government, and their first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, was deliberately weak. Fearing another tyrant, they built a national government with no president, no national courts, and no power to tax. It did have one big win: the Northwest Ordinance, which set up an orderly way to admit new states and ban slavery in that territory. But that weakness was dangerous. When farmers in Shays' Rebellion took up arms, the government was too feeble to stop them. And people panicked. This isn't working. Time for a new plan. So in 1787, delegates met in Philadelphia and quietly scrapped the Articles to write the Constitution. And it took compromise, so know these. The Great Compromise created a 2-house Congress, a Senate with equal votes for every state, and a House based on population. The 3/5 Compromise counted 3 out of every 5 enslaved people for representation, and the separate deal protected the slave trade for 20 years. Then the whole system rested on 3 ideas: federalism, splitting power between nation and states, separation of powers, and checks and balances. So no branch grows too strong. But the Constitution still had to be ratified, and the country split clean in 2. On one side, Federalists wanted a strong central government, and they defended it in the Federalist Papers, written by Hamilton, Madison, and Jay. On the other, anti-Federalists feared a powerful government would crush liberty, and demanded protection for individual rights. So to win them over, the Federalists promised a Bill of Rights. In 1791, those first 10 amendments were added, guaranteeing freedoms like speech, religion, and a fair trial. Deal sealed. The Constitution became the law of the land. George Washington became the first president, and here's the key. Everything he did set a precedent. His Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, pushed a bold financial plan. Have the federal government assume state debts and create a national bank to build credit and power. When farmers rebelled against the whiskey tax, Washington personally led troops to crush the Whiskey Rebellion, proving the new government had teeth. Wanting to stay out of Europe's wars, he issued a proclamation of neutrality. And in his farewell address, he warned the nation to avoid permanent foreign alliances and political parties. But political parties formed anyway, and they grew out of a fight between two men. Set them side by side. Hamilton's Federalists wanted a strong central government, a national bank, a loose reading of the Constitution, and close ties with Britain, backed by merchants and bankers. Jefferson's Democratic Republicans wanted power kept with the states, a strict reading of the Constitution, and friendship with France, backed by farmers. This clash over how big government should be became America's very first party system, and honestly, that debate never really ended. And that's APUSH Unit 3. The French and Indian War and its debt, the taxes and resistance, the ideas of Locke and Paine, the Declaration, the road from Saratoga to Yorktown, the weak articles, the Constitution's compromises, the ratification fight, Washington's precedents, and the first party system. You just covered the whole thing. But here's the truth. Watching is not the same as knowing. So head over to AIM5 and practice Unit 3 for free, with instant feedback on every question. The link is below. Now go get that 5, and I'll see you in Unit 4.